Hi. Welcome to the ASMR den. It's really just a corner of my basement that I've sort of dressed up to look like a 70s den. Dens have kind of gone out of style. The man cave is the modern replacement. But it lacks some of the romance of a sort of the pipe tobacco smell and the dim lighting and dark walls that most dens had back in that time. It's been a while since I've done a video, and there's a bunch of reasons for that, but I am working on a couple of long form videos, but they're gonna take a little while still, so I didn't want to just go dry until then. People think I'd lost interest in it. I feel like I always talk about I'm gonna make more videos, so I'm just not gonna say that anymore, because I'm just gonna make what I make. I get a lot out of doing this. It's very therapeutic for me. But there's priorities. You got to prioritize everything. And also, I'm just not getting any better, I think, at it being just sort of an easy, natural thing for me to just make a video, no big deal. There's still a production for me, and I still get obsessed with tiny details. Like, for instance, what is in those cubicles back there. I recorded part of this video once, and I paused it at a part, and I realized those alcoves were empty, and it just annoyed me. It's a stupid thing, but it annoyed me. I had to find some stuff to put in them and start the recording over. So here we are now. Start it over. Clean slate. Sometimes you got to do that. You got to you accrue a bunch of sort of baggage. You kind of have to know when the time has come to chop down the old rotting tree and plant a new one. So what I wanted to do tonight was talk a little bit about binaural and its effects, and how to best achieve it, or how I'm trying to best achieve it, and sort of what the conflicting schools of thought are. And then I just wanted to sort of segue into some very traditional ASMR. If you're familiar with my videos, you might be wondering, okay, well, something weird's going to happen halfway through. Not this time. This is, I don't want to call this an interstitial video, because my intention is for it to be pretty long, and it's fairly involved. But it is a very straightforward sort of sound video. So, and it's doubling, I guess, as apparently it's doubling as a channel update. So, lucky you. So I'm just gonna talk a little bit about just a little intro, I guess, and then go right into the ASMR-y kinds of sounds. So to start, binaural for me is kind of a I don't want. It's not controversial, but it's not a cut and dry. It's an iffy subject for me. I have listened to ASMR for a while, not as long as many people have, obviously, and I've generally been of the opinion that all I need is stereo. And sometimes not even that, but stereo really kind of gives it quite a bit more effectiveness than mono. And I don't feel that kind of a sort of generational leap between stereo and binaural. I still don't. That's not to say I'm questioning the efficacy of binaural. I realize it's not like religion. It actually is a thing and it can be proven. But how important it is and how to best go about getting it, those things seem to still be very much up for debate, very subjective, at least how important they are. And even how you best go about getting it, it seems like the articles I've read about it come to very definite conclusions that are in opposition to one another, which obviously can't be true. I mean, this is a quantifiable thing we're talking about. It either is or it isn't, one way or the other. So there remains work to be done, I guess. So the schools of thought on binaural and how to best achieve a binaural recording. I think there are basically three. One is that the most important thing to achieve a binaural recording, is the shape of the cartilage, the cartilage membranes of the ear, and that the way the sound coming in bounces around the ear and does some little crazy stuff before it enters the ear canal, that information is somehow translated into slight modifications in phase or reverberations or whatever it is, and that those subtle audio cues are what give you the it's not an illusion, or what tell you the vector of the origin of the sound, or at least give you some insight into where it came from. So those binaural recordings tend to concentrate on the 3DO or some kind of ear modeling, but that's what they're concentrating on. Personally, my opinion on that is I think the 3DO definitely has a place, and it's very effective for the ear sounds that you get from it. But I don't know that that has anything to do with an increased sense of location perception. I think it's just the ear sounds you get by manipulating the ears are what make that an attractive proposition. And I know there are also people who will stick binaural microphones in their ears, and actually use their ears to be the binaural microphones. I did a binaural recording like that. My first one, like I said, I've been doing stereo for a long time. I haven't done binaural except for the past couple of months. I've been experimenting with it, and the quality of binaural microphones as far as their noise floor and that kind of stuff, unless you get to the super, super high quality microphones, they're not that great. But most of these microphones are meant to handle, they're small diaphragm condenser microphones. They're meant to handle proximity really well, and they do that. And therefore your noise floor doesn't have to be that low. You can get away with it, and that's fine. So that's actually what I have here, a pair of binaural microphones on this little guy here. We'll get to him in a minute. So I've just fairly recently gotten into binaural recordings to complement the stereo recording that I generally do. So where do we leave off? See, this is why I like scripts. I'm trying not to script any of my videos anymore. But it's not that sometimes I can't think of anything to say. That's bad. But just as often I can think of stuff to say, but then I can't remember what got me off on what tangent and where I was heading. And I feel like I need some kind of cueing system to move the plot forward. Don't really have a plot for this, but I know where I'm trying to get, right, to the different kinds of binaural recording. So there's the school of thought that says that it's the shape of the ear that is the most effective way of conveying the additional location information via sound. There's the school of thought that says it's the shape of the head that does it, and a lot of those are very readily seen in the binaural heads that you see. Some of them are done, with different kinds of angles to try and increase the separation of the sound. Some of them have ears attached as well, because obviously it might not be all one thing or the other. But the third school of thought of what conveys the sort of meta tag information in sound that gives you the location is that it is the bones of your skull. That the frontal bone, the parietal, and the temporal, to a lesser extent the occipital bones, that the subtle reverberations in those bones from sound waves are translated through to the bones of the ear, and become the sort of meta information that you need to be able to discern the original vector of a sound. So with that in mind, I thought I'd do a little experiment here, and I've hooked up a pair of binaural microphones to my skull. Well, to this skull, which I own. That'd be a neat trick if it were my skull. So you can see it here. I've just sort of run the cable through the back of the skull case, down through the frame and magnum, out, up around, and just kind of taped them to the sides. What worked really well here, that was a happy accident, as Bob Ross would say, was that I just took some duct tape and folded it on itself. You kind of do when you're trying to stick something, make double-sided tape when you don't have double-sided tape. And I affixed the microphones to it. And essentially, what that ended up doing, I don't know if you can see this, was made these into little shock mounts, which is great. It ended up working really well. Of course, I just admitted that I didn't do it intentionally, but I'll never admit that again. I will say that it's not going to work. You can just go back and see that I already admitted it. But it worked out really well. It was a very fortunate coincidence. So the microphones are attached to the skull. Right now, I'm recording through my standard stereo headphones. But as we move through the video, I will be, like I said, I feel like there are pros and cons to both. Right now, I don't generally film framing my face that closely. I like to have some kind of set involved as well. So there is some distance. There's about 18 inches, maybe a little bit more, between me and the microphones. And if I were recording solely with the binaural microphones doing that, the gain would not be very good. I'd have to up the gain, which would up the noise. Whereas what I'm using right now are shotgun microphones, so they're very good at eliminating what they call off-axis sound, which means they only kind of get the sound that's coming right at them. Which is kind of neat, is that microphone patterns themselves have a sort of method of determining location. Perhaps it's not all that different from the way we do it. I should also kind of caveat not only everything I'm going to say, but everything I have said so far by saying, I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I really just wanted to tape some microphones to a skull and make an ASMR video. So I'm sure I've said some ridiculous things in the past 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll probably say some ridiculous things in the next 30 or however many minutes this video ends up being. But I'm just saying it to say stuff because it's an ASMR video. I'm trying to say stuff so that you can hear me. You know what's interesting right now is all I see in the reflection of the lens is the skull. It's kind of unnerving. It really is. That's all I see. I'm just staring at a skull right now. Ooh. Kind of weird. My point is that I'm not really trying to lecture anybody or get anybody to learn anything. I'm trying to get you all to go to sleep. So like I said, I'm going to use these microphones when appropriate to complement what I'm doing with the stereo microphones. So I'll switch back and forth. Probably as I'm moving on, I'm just going to kind of switch over to these and leave these off. But we'll see. That's going to be decided in post, as so many things are these days. So I'm about ready to get going. I just want to say I'm happy that you guys are all with me. I'm amazed at the number of subscribers that I've gotten so far, and very thankful and humble. And I realize how unimportant all this is by any measure, really. But if I can do anything to make someone's anxiety better, the times that ASMR videos have helped me, they've helped me so much that I've just been so grateful. And it makes me feel good that I can do, and that's selfish, right? I mean, it makes me feel good. I feel good doing this. Why? Whatever. But it makes me feel good to think that I could make someone else feel a little tiny bit better. So yeah, thank you guys and girls, and everybody should use sort of gender norm pronouns like that. It's old-fashioned of me. But thank you, and let's give this a shot, and let's see how effective this is. And you know, even before we get into that, I mean, it's obvious already, right? This is not actual bone; it's some kind of polymer, so it's not going to make the same sounds that bone would. And any kind of bone-like, skull-like facsimile, I guess, is going to also emulate a dummy head. So even if this works, well, is it because it's emulating a dummy head, or is it because of the reverberations on the bone-like structures? And also, there's no brain in here, so I would have to fill this with like some kind of a plastic bag of water or something, which I'm not going to do, because these binaural microphones, they're not that sturdy. They're not weather sealed. They're not even really, I'm worried these things are going to break almost every time I use them. So yeah, let's just kind of table the idea that this is actually any kind of serious scientific experimentation. Even if I talk about it like it is, I am full of it. That's the point you should come away from this video with, if nothing else. I am full of it. Okay, so I've got some stuff. I'm going to do some stuff to this thing with these microphones on, and you'll be able to hear it, and we'll see how effective the our echolocation is. Not real echolocation, but and we'll just kind of go from there, and hopefully y'all will fall asleep and not be so anxious. Okay, let's get started. Turned on the binaural microphones. You may hear a difference in sound quality already. Not necessarily better, not necessarily worse, but different tone, some kind of tonal variation. And you might recognize this bass, the bass that I've put at the base of the skull, as a cookie press that I used in a Witcher video a month ago, or thereabouts. For such an innocuous usage, it looks pretty, well, it looks kind of pagan, which There's nothing wrong with that. So, one thing that I've noticed for me with binaural recordings is that I'm very, very prone to, hold on a second, I'm very, very prone to suggestion when it comes to location. So if an ASMR artist, I still don't know what is the proper term, says to me, I'm behind you now, right? Then I'm more prone to actually feel like they are behind me, because my experience has generally been, when you have stereo, you're dealing with a one-dimensional dispersion of sound, sort of along a line. You're either to the left or you're to the right. So you can give the illusion of being in the middle of your head, way over to one side, somewhere in between, but you're always sort of on this one axis going through your ears. And what binaural gives to that, purports to give to that, is it makes it two-dimensional, or actually three-dimensional, although it's much more effective at two-dimensional than it is three-dimensional. That is a sort of sheet going through your head, anywhere over here, 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 here. There are obviously audio cues that are different if you're up here or down here. For me, I get those a little bit, but not very much. It's much more effective at sort of where along this invisible two-dimensional plane is the sound coming from, and much less where in the y-axis or z-axis, depending on what coordinate system you're using, the sound is coming from. The other thing, sort of to add on to that, is, and this may be my limited perception again, is I don't actually get 360 degrees of spatial awareness when it comes to binaural recordings. I really get 180 degrees and then mirrored, flipped behind me. Because, like I said, I'm very prone to suggestion when ASMR artists say something. Now if they say, hey, I'm whispering in your left ear, right? It's obvious that I'm whispering in your left ear, and I'm whispering in your right ear. I'm whispering in your right ear, right? But if I'm directly behind you, or directly in front of you, those two things I don't perceive so much. And those are the kinds of things I'm talking about when I say I'm very prone to suggestion in those areas. So if an ASMR artist says that they are coming up behind me, and they're actually behind me, it's great. And I feel like they are behind me because they told me. But if they hadn't told me, if you flip that coordinate system 180 degrees, it could just as easily be that for me. Actually, it's not flip, it would be rotate, because over here would be the equivalent to being over here, not over here. It's a little confusing. The way I explained it is a little confusing. It's not a confusing concept. It's just I over-talk and under-elucidate. So, so when point is, does back and forth work? Is it 360? Is it 180? I don't know. Let's see if we can find out here. Now, I don't have a name for the skull. The obvious name would be Yorick, clearly. Whose lips I kissed, I know not how often, and who gave me a bunch of rides on his back, and who was a man of infinite jest. And that's all I remember. It's been a long time, but I used to know it better, I promise. So that would be the obvious name, would be Yorick, but we could always go for a more contemporary name. For instance, Sands, Papyrus, Murray. I don't remember the name of the skull from Planescape Torment. If anybody remembers the name of the skull from Planescape Torment, if you could leave it in the comments, that would be great. I could just Google it. It's more fun this way. It's okay. Let's get started again. I have some things I brought. Let's just start with what we have out. It's a compass. Now, had I truly been being scientific about this, I would have measured the distance from the top of the head where the fontanelles meet for the parietal bones. Parietal bones? Temporal bones. Where the temporal bones meet the frontal bone in the different fontanelles that run across the lines across the skull. Skull is pretty fascinating, the way that, from an evolutionary standpoint, because it's one of those systems that creationists will point to and say, well, how did the skull evolve? What good is half a skull? How could it have gone in sort of measured steps from not being a skull to being a skull? Because that means at one point it was half a skull, and a half skull doesn't do anybody any good. That's the similar argument to what they say about birds' wings. But of course, it ignores two fundamental evolutionary precepts, one of which is the idea of punctuated equilibrium, which was made famous by Stephen Jay Gould, who has sadly since passed on. If you've never read an essay by Stephen Jay Gould, you really should. I've never read essays by anyone where learning has been so much fun. And yeah, he was a great man. But anyway, the idea of punctuated equilibrium is that there are long sort of periods of evolutionary stagnation, not much changing. And then there are these sort of periods of, like the Cambrian explosion, a bunch of other periods in history where there's just, a lot of times it's precipitated by a change in environment, an introduction of a predator, something like that, where all of a sudden mutations are being much more sort of savagely chosen for or against. And you can have large mutations that in a regular period, this large mutation would pop up. It might confer a benefit, it might confer a big benefit, but it's still just going to disappear. But in these sort of periods of tumult, they are the difference between life and death, and they can change a species radically in comparatively few generations. So that ignores, like creationists like to look at evolution and say that it's just kind of when they critique it, they look at it as it's just kind of a gradual slope, and that's just not the way the fossil record kind of shows this. It's sort of periods of activity and then periods of dormancy. So it ignores that, and it also ignores the idea of parallel usage. So, for instance, for wings, they weren't always used as wings. They were used for something else. What were they used for? Gliding, regulation of temperature. We don't necessarily know 100%, but they had a use apart from what they were originally meant to be. It's actually interesting that I've sort of gone down this tangential alleyway, because the ear is a really good example of a whole bunch of bones that, how could an ear evolve like that? That's another really good example of what creationists will point to and say that an ear is proof of God. Now, of course, it is the opinion of evolutionists that they are completely wrong. So, but those are two of the reasons why, the two things that people who want to discount the argument will just ignore. Anyway, so had I been, Jesus, I'm in rare form. Had I been trying to do this scientifically and actually striving for some kind of repeatable experiment that would have given results, I would have very carefully measured from the top center of the skull where the fontanelles meet to get a very nice sort of exact positioning of the microphones. But I just eyeballed it. And probably throughout history, we would be shocked by the number of precise scientific measurements and other things that we would hope would be very precise that were actually just eyeballed. Because someone was impatient, or because they had a bad day, or they felt that they had done it enough, that that their instinct was good enough, and they didn't need to use scientific method. It's a scary thought. So there's very clearly a sort of hollow sound here, which isn't by itself necessarily reason to discount this experiment, because obviously the relative density of the skull compared to the brain is pretty big. Obviously it's not as big as the relative density of the skull compared to nothing at all. But like I said, we're eyeballing it. The skull has these little latches for the skull cap, and they make interesting sounds too. I've already talked a lot more than I thought I would, so I both apologize, and will try not to talk that much for the rest of the video. No, that's a lie. I'm just going to talk as much as I want. I mean, I care about you guys. I say guys. It's a terrible habit I need to break. I care about you all, and but I don't care that much. So the royal you all, I care about quite a bit. You as individuals, I could take you or leave you. Except that one person. You know who you are. Yeah, talking about you. So, yeah, these latches just kind of keep the skull cap affixed. I had to loosen them a little bit because I didn't want to put too much pressure on the back of the cord here. And because none of my videos would be complete without there being a syringe with something in it. Let's see. What kind of sounds this makes. I'm not sure if this makes any sound at all, but if I cup it over the microphone, will it be kind of like a seashell? Except instead of hearing the ocean, maybe you'll hear scientists talking in the lab about titration rates and Bunsen burners. You can see how familiar I am with laboratory equipment because I fall back on the most common piece of apparatus in a lab. Oops, I wanted to use this. See if this makes any noise at all. I find these noises quite interesting. I don't know how they're going to translate. They might sound vulgar. as I mentioned before, I've kind of just made like a little set in my basement. But I've actually made more than one for some of the projects I was talking about earlier. Some of them have been up for a couple of weeks already. And I kind of forget that they're there sometimes. Which can be embarrassing. As you might imagine. Had some security people over this past week. And brought them down here to show them where the brain box was for the alarm. Just not even thinking, and it wasn't until I actually got all the way down the steps that it dawned on me like, oh, this doesn't look great, because I've got, if you could see a little bit outside the frame of the camera right now, there's I got all kinds of things around it. There's plastic with blood on it, fake blood. I have like lots of things with fake blood on. I have like towels with fake blood on them, and just it looks bad. And I think the thing that saves me from someone calling the police immediately is all the sort of video stuff and sound equipment that's set up. So I had to quickly point it out and say, oh yeah, I make YouTube videos. Were this 50 years ago, if our little buddy here acted up a little too much, we might calm him or her down by, well, this is a screwdriver, but if it were a little sharper, or maybe a pick, by sort of inserting it, breaking through the thin wall of bone that makes up the orbit of the eyes, pushing it into the brain and sort of having a wiggle to disconnect the majority of the connections between the frontal lobe, kind of cutting off part of the frontal lobe, lobotomizing somebody. Of course, we have much more humane ways of being inhumane now, ways that seem more humane, provoke less outrage, but still have the same end result, really. So I'm not going to make holes in the orbits of the eyes of the skull, but I have this in here. It's just a piece of plastic, but what I like about it is how thin it is. It's so thin that the sound it makes when you crinkle it, it's almost not crinkling. It's almost like stiff fabric. Yeah, I like that. So, the circular bass that I have here, that I used in the Witcher video a little while ago, I only thought about this maybe like a couple minutes before the video, but I thought I'd use it as a summoning board or something, and I really liked the sound that it made when I combined it with these little glass. They're like pente chips. They're often used, to put in the bottom of vases with fake flowers, whatever it is. But they're pretty, and they make a good noise when you tap them together. It was really cold today, but it was one of those days where it was also very sunny. So when you looked outside, the sun was so intense that you would have sworn it was warm. And you go outside and you discover the truth. It's like a little prank. So this base, being circular, would be sort of the perfect space to test if. One second, let me see. The perfect space to test if you can tell if I'm behind you or in front of you. So as I go around. See if you can tell without looking. That's important. Okay, wait. All right, so close your eyes. Don't peek. This is for science. And I'm going to start somewhere and do a full revolution. And see if you can tell where I started and where I ended. Okay, close your eyes. Go. Don't peek. Go. Okay, you can open your eyes. So I started right next to your left ear, went behind you, and then ended, obviously, the other side, your left ear, went counterclockwise. So really, if you can tell the difference between this and this, then you have a better ear for binaural sound than I do. Likewise, if you can tell the difference between this and this, the same. It's you take 0 degrees as straight through the ears, and positive either way. And so if it's 30 degrees here, 30 degrees here, I can't tell the difference. But you might be able to. There's different inscribed sort of troughs, little circles in this thing, and they have different sized ridges. They make different noises. Sounds good. I don't have a whole lot of experience doing this kind of ASMR video, so I'm kind of just stabbing in the dark here. Okay, let's try something else. Fingernails might be good too. I wish I had them. I bite them because I'm anxious all the time. Okay. hopefully you've been sort of lulled into a nearly comatose state. Got a few more things I want to do, and then call it a night. These are those edible packing peanuts. Now, I mean, I say edible. It's not like they taste good. They kind of stick to your teeth and they're gross, but they will dissolve in contact with the saliva. And kind of a cool sound. They're relaxing the hell out of me. I want to take a big handful and just squish them. Why don't I do that? They have a really interesting sort of texture and resilience for how light they are. And they retain their shape pretty well. I can see them still expanding back. But they're so light. And so delicious. It's like crushing a Coke can. Everything's a Coke can to me. I'm addicted. That one broke. I hope that wasn't too loud. You can see the inside. Kind of hollow. I didn't know that. Very interesting. Couple more. This one looks like it might crack as well. I like these. Got some pencil marks on the skull. I just want to kind of get them off. I'm definitely not gonna. This is not ear cleaning because the skull has no ears. So there's no way that you could say that this is ear cleaning. It's not. Oh my. There's actually quite a bit of dirt on that. I think that's the pencil marks. I hope. that's the closest I will ever come to ear cleaning. Or maybe not. Maybe I'll just do a straight up ear cleaning video next. Who knows? Alright. Hopefully you're almost asleep. The last thing I wanted to show you all was a toy that has some unexpected ASMR properties to me. They're called bunchums. Basically like little balls made up of like extended Velcro hooks of different colors, and you can put them together any way you want, however you want them to go, and kind of go at it. This bunch kind of looks like someone was trying to make candy corn, but they make a cool sound. I like it when you squeeze it, and when you kind of move around. They're actually a pretty good simulation of strong and nuclear forces. If they were repelling magnets, in addition to the hooks, you'd get a decent teaching tool. You can also stick them. They're good at sticking on beards. They'll just kind of stay wherever you put them. Well, for the most part. Let's get some more out. They also trap air pretty readily, obviously. Yeah. Like Katamari. Very easy to clean up. So, I'm whispering now since it's, the end of the video, essentially. And hopefully you've all gotten to a state where you're almost asleep, if not asleep. But I am curious to know if you're awake, how this worked, if you were able to tell the difference between behind and in front of, if you have 360 degrees of binaural awareness or only 180. So let me know in the comments. less work on the channel, but I would like to be able to put out more videos for not too much more work. And this might be a way to do that. So, like I said, let me know what you guys think and what you all think. I gotta stop with the guys. That's just, since I was a kid, you know, everybody just said guys to me. It's a collective thing, but I understand the connotations, and I understand that it can be actually insulting to people, so I'm trying to remove it from my lexicon, and I'm having mixed success, but I'm trying. Okay, I hope you all have a good night, and I'll talk to you again soon. I gotta go make a phone call, so I'll see you all